Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It is a midweek Wednesday edition of the program. We are happy to be with you. Jacob Albracht here alongside Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers. Jad, man in that KFH hotline, 869-1240. We're going to give you an opportunity to win some prizes later on that hotline. We're going to tell you about a special promotion as well that we have going for you. Lots of chances to win different things here on the program. Always happy to do that. It is not a Kevin Saul Wednesday. You'll recall that was moved to Monday. So nobody lined up. Those phone lines are open. 869-1240. By the way, you can go to the Odyssey app, listen to that interview, any interview we do here on the program. Those get podcasted out. Jad does that for us. Always appreciate getting that work done as well. Tommy, it's a Wednesday. We don't have Super Bowl. We're beginning to get, NFL free agency rumors, rumblings. The draft is coming up. It's never the offseason in the NFL. We've got CFP news that we just briefly touched on yesterday that I think we can get into a little bit. And we have a shocker game night tonight. How are you today?
I'm good. I don't know about you, but this is the time of year for me. Once football season is over, I always make a list of all the different shows that I want to watch and that I haven't had a chance to watch because I'm always watching football. And now I'm starting to work my way through that list. My wife and I, I'll watch some college basketball and whatnot, but it's time to catch up on a lot of the shows that I've missed over the last few months.
Do you actually write that list out, or are you just like a mental?
Oh,
list?
I've got a mind like a steel trap, so I keep it all up here.
Yeah. We are starved for the time to watch things. It drives us crazy. We used to be very good about it, but now with life the way it is, like you get through the morning, which consists of, for her, she's usually working inside the HTO stores. For me, it's usually getting everything that I can done then to get ready to be here and prep for this show. Then we have the regular work day. And then at night, we're usually chasing the kids somewhere. And then after bedtime, it's like, okay, now we have to finish the rest of the work that we couldn't get to in the morning. So we struggle to find that time for shows right now. We love watching shows. I watched Fargo most recently. It was fantastic. It was incredible, the new season. I keep telling her we need to – I will go back because she wants me to rewatch that with her, but I'm like, I finished that like 2 weeks ago. I can't do that quickly. But I was like, I will rewatch Ted Lasso with you because she hasn't seen it. It's like we could rip through those real fast because I haven't seen the new season. So that might be what we do. That samurai show coming out on, I think FX is one that I've got recorded and I'm pretty intrigued by. I always think samurai stuff is pretty cool. That's all that's really on my list though. I'm behind on most of that.
Yeah, my wife and I are one of the millions of people around the country that are binge watching Suits on Netflix. And like I didn't watch it when it came out. I know it. I mean, I think it came out like in 2011 or something like that. It's been out for a long time. And I think a lot of it is because of, people's collective interest in Meghan Markle and all of that with the royal family. And she's in the show and that sort of thing.
She's in Suits?
She is. Yeah. She's in the first.
She's an actress?
Yeah. That's how she got her start.
I didn't know that.
She's an actress and she's got a main role in Suits. Huh. And so I think that's why a lot of people are watching it. The only issue with that show, and I love it, but we're talking 9 seasons and we're talking like 16 episodes per season.
And these are hour-long episodes?
They're like 45 minutes, but still, I mean, it's taken us, we started it probably back in November. And we would maybe catch an episode here and there because there was football and things like that. And I wasn't really, wanting to stop down. Now we're starting to watch more of these episodes after we put our kids to bed and all of that. But we still got a ways to go. It's a good show. I really enjoy it, but it's kind of a grind to get through that whole thing.
Yeah, we'd have no chance to make it through a show that long. Ozark's probably the last one like that, but that was a as it comes along type show. The other problem for us is we lost Netflix because they stopped stealing passwords.
Well, maybe you should pay for it like everybody else does.
Nah, we're not going to do that. So we had her mom's and now we're, Netflix busted us, but we still get the kids stuff on there for some reason. I hope Netflix isn't listening right now, you big jerks. But whatever. Like I'll watch what I can get access to. Like, and I'm a sucker for it too. Like, I signed up for the Paramount Network so I could watch the Yellowstone spinoffs, and I'd still get charged every month because I forget to cancel it. So I'm
That's
one
what
of
they're
those
hoping
suckers.
for. That's why they do that.
Exactly. So I'm not like I'm not. I have no interest in going, and I have reached that point in my life where I care far less about like being left behind on some show that's coming out on Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I guess I just won't be in the loop on that one. Like, I'm not paying for HBO. Sorry, like just to watch a show because I'll forget to cancel it. And I won't tell you how we plan to see Ted Lasso. But I think we can accomplish that without having that same issue. So we'll see. It's fine. It's no big deal. It's funny that this streaming thing has basically become cable now. Like everybody understands why cable's expensive to begin with. Just put some commercials in there. Commercials both do us a lot of good professionally. So put some commercials in there and just give it to us for free. That's how I'll just keep going that route, I guess.
Well, I mean it's we're headed towards a world where you get to subscribe and pay, and then they also will give you commercials.
And then you also get commercials, right?
It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be both.
No. We watched a movie recently on Amazon, I think, which of course my wife has a subscription to that. And we had commercials fed in, and I'm like, well, this is stupid. Like, why do you have to pay for this to begin with? Just give us the commercials. Like, I don't mind the commercials, well, never mind.
It sounds like all you need though in your life.
AI is listening to everything.
You just need like bunny ears. You need an antenna on your TV.
I have it. Well, no.
And
so the problem
there
is I have to watch. I got to watch my sports, so I have to have access to those. So whatever also comes through the access to those is pretty much what I watch now. I have a few other. I have access to a few other things that like still provide some things too. So you know what? It's fine. I don't have time anyway, and it's like a time suck. So I have in the last few years, it's bothered me less that I might miss a good show. Like at some point, I might catch it. And I love shows. I love storytelling. I love all of this stuff. Like it's great. Mike chimes in. Mike or artificial intelligence Siri has hacked Mike to run a PR program. Just saying Amazon just started charging for no commercials, $3 a month. Mike, I don't care. I don't want to pay anything for it. It's the principle of the matter. Mike or Siri or whoever is controlling Mike's account right now. I don't need any. You know what? Sidebar. Quick turn right here. One of my biggest pet peeves in television, in what I do on the other, one of the other jobs that I have, is somehow like Amazon and Starbucks, like they have infiltrated putting basically their PR campaigns right in the middle of like wire copy. So as everybody's going through the wire copy, it'll be, oh, look, pumpkin spice lattes are back. Or like, oh, look, Amazon's running a new Black Friday deal. And I'm like, how the hell does this get in there? Like if they want to buy a commercial, they can call Tommy and then buy a dang commercial. Like this is so ridiculous. And this is like, it's genius what they've done. It drives me crazy though. I'm like, no, get it out. Like I take it out every time I catch it. Like we're not giving people free commercials here. That is not our jobs. And it drives me nuts as a business owner who buys commercials, as somebody who works in industries that rely on commercial buying. Like I'm sure not giving those guys free ones like that. It drives me crazy.
Hey, that's the world that we're in now. And, whether that, and not that this is going to become a discussion on that sort of thing, but man, it's the way the world works. I mean, you're getting kind of that, both sides of the commercial advertising and then, all these different digital platforms. And, I also read it, and we can relate this back to sports. I did read that I think it's what ESPN and Fox, and I think maybe somebody else, they're coming together for like an all sports platform on streaming TV. And I don't know exactly when that's going to happen. But I know that it's like the major players in sports broadcasting, they're all coming together for some kind of like new sports only streaming platform. And I don't know when it's happening. I think it's coming soon.
Yeah, I don't think they have the details quite on it yet. It's Disney, Warner, Discovery, and Fox.
Okay.
So that would include of the channels we care about. Obviously, Disney is ESPN, Fox is Fox. Warner Discovery, I believe,
That's like
is like
TNT, TBS.
TNT.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it is a very interesting concept because for somebody like me, like I pay for YouTube TV just so I can watch sports.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm paying all that money basically just so I can watch sports. So yeah, if there's a sports only platform, I'm probably finding my way to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really interesting concept because it also throws into, into the loop here what's happening with networks in college athletics, right? And going on. So what does that then do to these other platforms and these deals that are being done? Does that raise the value of a deal with the conference, a television deal, or does that lower the value because you're taking away competitive buying? I don't know. But it is a really big idea, and it will be just a massive, massive beast. But like everything else, I'm sure there's a high cost to do everything. And then does it make it worth it? And then who knows how that works out. But listen, I blame you. You're the one who pulled the rocking chair out and planted it on the front porch for me to sit in and whine about things. So here we are on a Wednesday morning without, football season. This is what happens. You're fully responsible for this.
Well, I've got no issue with it. I mean, because I enjoy, number one, I enjoy following these new developments in technology. But number two, I think even more than that, I love hearing you complain about it. And, you sound, I know that we're about the same age, but man, you sound about 50 years older than me when you complain about, the way things are moving to and the good old days. And, I used to walk uphill to school both ways and that sort of thing.
I tell people that I'm pretty much like life stopped for me and the world started passing me by in about probably like 2010. And that was when I'm like, nope, this is as good as it gets. And I'm going to be stuck here now. This is where I'm planting that rocking chair. And this is where I'll go. No, I'm still up to speed on tech. I'm very tech savvy. My desire to care about all this stuff has waned significantly. Like, I don't care that I miss a show. I don't care that whatever. And now it's just funny to me observing it because I don't subscribe to any of this stuff anyway. It doesn't matter. I still have as close to the old way as you can get with like YouTube TV or cable or whatever. This new stuff, it's just funny to me because we've been talked down to by the cord cutters. Can't tell you how many times a cord cutter has, walked into the room and been like, do you know that cord cutting can save you a lot of money? And now those same cord cutters are just getting gouged. And I'm like, well, this is, I hate to say I told you so, but, I kind of told you so there. Thanks for the lecture, though. I'll see you back in 2010. All right, Tommy, moving forward, away from 2010, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about this CFP development. That is a future I can get behind, in an evolution that I can get behind. And the model to the postseason is the best news we could have ever had for our teams around here, and quite frankly, for college football in general. Ken, we'll get to your comments on the Royals. Ken taking me to task for a little bit for something I said yesterday about the Royals and their manager. We'll get to that. Lots of fun today. It is more wide open than it has been in, 6 months. So if there's something on your mind, you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. 869-1240 is the number on that KFH hotline. By the way, KFH and Taco Bell have your chance to win a trip for two to the College Hoops Championship Tournament in Kansas City, March 13th through 16th, to cheer on whatever school it is that you root for. This trip includes 2 all-session tournament passes and 3-night hotel accommodations. To enter, simply text TB BIG to the number 20357. If you want a complimentary breakfast burrito, you can go to kfhradio.com, click on the events page, download the voucher, and then head to any Wichita and surrounding Taco Bell location, with the exception of Hutchinson. Your chance to see the College Hoops Championship Tournament and snag a complimentary breakfast burrito from Taco Bell happens right here on KFH. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. Jad Chambers producing for us. It is Wednesday, no NFL, but an NFL offseason that will be very interesting. We'll get into that, but I want to go to college football, Tommy. So we get the 5-7 model. There had been some rumors of the new CFP, the 12-team, potentially just going to a 12-team at-large consideration when we had all the conference alignment. And I said it at the time, that would be the worst thing that could happen to college football if that happened. Because then what you'll have is, well, one, you'd have a system similar to what we have now. It would be better, but not really that much better, because what would happen is you'd just have a bunch of SEC and Big Ten teams in there. You're still going to have a bunch of SEC and Big Ten teams in a 5-7. But what happens now is you've guaranteed relevance to all the other conferences and teams across the country. And that's all it takes. Legitimately, all it takes for college football is to guarantee the other leagues a seat at the table. It's been my greatest fear since the beginning of all of this, is that teams across the country would not be competing for the championship. Now we've guaranteed through this system that whoever it is that ends up winning the Big 12 at minimum will be in. The same for the ACC. And then the same for essentially what would become a Cinderella team most years. And that's good too. I mean, that's for the fans' perspective and for viewership and for relevance all over the country. That's another really good thing. Is it always going to give us the most deserving? Maybe not, but that's okay, because it's at minimum, it's good TV. It's good drama, right? To see one of those teams, at least in one round, take a swing at somebody. So I love this, Tommy. I think this makes this new system. I mean, honestly, we'll see it play out, but I think it's just about perfect. I don't know that right now we have to have more than 12. I think you get the representation that matters, and this is going to be a blast. This is going to be a ton of fun.
I think the important thing with it is that the relevance will continue for not only the Big 12, and we all knew that relevance was going to continue with the way that Brett Yormark has built the conference, but it continues relevance for the ACC to an extent. It even continues relevance for Washington State and Oregon State in the Pac-12, even though everybody else has left them. And I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think that that's going to be the long-term future of those two schools. I think that we're going to see the dust settle in a different way. But at least for now, in the interim, it does continue relevance for basically every other conference outside of the SEC and the Big Ten. And I think that's really important because, yeah, if it were up to those two major conferences, it would just be a full 12 at-larges, and we would have a situation where there might be one or two Big 12 teams that get in. There might be, Florida State stays in the ACC. There might be, an opportunity for an ACC team, but really it kind of shuts the door on everybody else. And so by doing it this way and by having 5 conference champions, and regardless of what conference those schools are coming from, the fact that you're getting 5 conference champions in 5 different conferences, that continues relevance for basically everybody outside of the SEC and the Big Ten. So I do think that that's really important.
It is important. And it's important on about 1,000 different levels, right? It just, if college football is going to remain this national thing, and it's never going to be totally national, right? Like, let's not misunderstand. It's not going to be the NFL, right? We're not going to have interest most of the time, most people, in every game that's played. So I'm not necessarily saying like this all of a sudden makes, SEC fans interested in Big 12 football. That's not what I'm saying, because I don't think that'll ever happen. But I think what will happen is it makes way more games relevant across the country for longer periods of time. So, for instance, if you're an Auburn fan and you're looking at those CFP rankings and you've got, let's say Kansas State's in the mix around the same place you are. They're both right around, 8, 9, 10 in those rankings. Well, if you're an Auburn fan, you're probably going to have more interest in tuning in to that K-State game that week to see if they lose, to see if you can jump them, right? And I do think this adds to that. Before, in the old model, it didn't really matter that often, right? There's 12 spots now, though. It'll matter a lot for a lot of teams. Like, it will expand that interest level further than what it has been. It allows for more you still, with 7 at-larges, you still have the freedom and the ability to get in teams that stumbled early, that schedule difficult early on, which the sport needs desperately, right? So you still have plenty of incentive for those teams to do that because they know there's still a window for them to get back in there and do it too, right? So another example of that, let's say K-State wants to open up a season, and this won't happen, but let's say they wanted to, and Alabama gives them a call and says, hey, we want to play the opening week against you. That game doesn't hurt K-State a bit. I mean, it might hurt them in the at-large consideration, but it doesn't hurt them in the sense that they can still go win the Big 12 and get in that way. And so I think it increases the likelihood of early season good games as we have conference expansion, and that's harder to do because there's less room on the schedule. I think it opens that door. It just everything about it, honestly, like this solves my greatest fear of all this expansion is that teams get left out. And through this, we know, at least in the short term, teams are not going to be left out, and that will save the sport.
Because what are we talking about here? We're not talking about opening the door up for schools that are not worthy to get into a playoff, getting in. That's
absolutely
not the conversation at all.
Maybe one time, right? If your 5th conference champion just doesn't happen to be that good, there's a small chance that could happen, but that's for one of 12 teams. That's it.
Yeah. And again, we know that like the majority of these schools, like if you're coming from the Sun Belt, if you're the conference champion for the Sun Belt Conference, that's great. Are you going to win a national championship? No, it's not going to happen.
But you could win one game.
But you could win one game. And so we're not talking about watering down this playoff at all. We're talking about having these additional schools and conferences, allowing them to have not only a seat at the table, but a reserved seat at the table to be able to, know that you are going to be able to get in. Number one, if you're a conference champion, and number two, if you're a better conference champion than the other conferences that, are being considered for this particular spot. So I think it makes a ton of sense. And it doesn't, you kind of, I think by nature, relate it back to March Madness, and it's apples and oranges, so it's a completely different situation from college basketball to college football. But if you can relate it back to the NCAA tournament, I mean, nobody ever says that when there's a 15 over a 2 seed or a 14 over a 3 seed, that those games shouldn't happen.
Right.
That's not the
And
case.
we know those
We
teams,
get
by the way,
excited about
we
them.
know
they're not gonna
those
win a
teams
national
aren't going to win a
championship.
national
Yeah.
championship. Yeah, we know that.
Right. But every once in a while, you've
100%
got a
agree.
team like Florida Atlantic last year that can make a run, make it to the Final Four. That's not going to happen in college football. But to at least have the opportunity to see those, you're not going to see, man, I'm trying to think of a more recent team, like maybe
Cincinnati a few years ago could have won some games.
Well, I'm talking,
that was a good team.
I'm talking like I don't know, like Tulane, for example. Getting in. I'm not sure that a team like Tulane would make it all the way to the semifinals, of the college football playoff necessarily.
Yeah, probably not.
So it's a different animal altogether from football to basketball. But nobody ever says that those smaller conferences and those schools that, the automatic qualifier conference champions that are making their way into the NCAA tournament don't deserve to be there. That's, that seat has been reserved for those conference champions for a number of years. And nobody ever says, why is the committee letting, this conference into our tournament? Because people like seeing the Cinderella and the underdog take on the juggernaut. That's just the way that it's always been. And so,
even though the vast majority of the time that Cinderella gets crushed,
right.
And that's okay.
It's okay. But nobody ever says that that's a bad thing to have happen or it waters down the NCAA tournament. And so this is kind of the same way, just on a different scale, a different level in college football. I don't think there's anything wrong with allowing conferences to have some reserved seats outside of the Big Ten and the SEC to be able to compete in this college football playoff.
It's better in every way. This is a better option. It would have killed the sport had they gone to at-larges all the way across and you just ended up with a bunch of Big Ten in it. I'm telling you, we just don't have the time or energy in the middle of the country to care that much about the SEC, right? Like, we'll watch it, but if there was a playoff featuring just those teams, I ain't that interested in that. I'm just not. And now it's better. It's always what's been great. People talk about, well, the debate and the conversation about college. And I most of the time, I think that's a silly argument when we were talking about, closing off a postseason. But I do agree in the sense that conference pride is one of the great things about college athletics. So when you've got your Big 12 representative in there and you can say, look how good our league is. All right, go prove it, whatever team that happens to be this year. What's also really exciting about it is now we know for certain that Kansas and Kansas State both have a really good chance to get into the CFP next year.
Yep.
Either as a Big 12 champion or as an at-large. Next year, I predict there will be as much buzz about college football in this part of the country collectively as we have ever seen before. I am so hopeful for this 12-team playoff and what it brings to the table that I think I know it all makes the transfer portal, all this stuff makes people uncomfortable and it's out of control and all that stuff. But I'm just telling you, knowing right now that at any given time you could go in and compete for a national championship is going to explode the interest in this thing more than we've ever seen before.
You don't even have to worry about in your opening game if you schedule a marquee opponent and you lose that game, that your chances then completely out of the water in the first week of September. Like, that's always been asinine that's been the way that it's set up, that teams are penalized for playing high-level games.
It makes every game matter more.
And then all of a sudden you've got really great and well-deserving teams that are out of the conversation because they lost one game to a quality opponent the first week of the season. That never made any sense at all.
When they had to start a freshman at quarterback, right? Or whatever the circumstance.
And I'll tell you one thing, and you talked about the Big 12 and you talked about Kansas and Kansas State having opportunities. When TCU was playing for a national championship, I don't give a damn about TCU. Never have, not a fan, don't follow them. But in that game I did. In that game,
Yep.
I rooted for them. In that game, I watched it because they represented the Big 12. It's the same way for me, and I'm sure it's different in college basketball, maybe for some people, but for me in March Madness, not only am I cheering for my teams in the tournament, I'm cheering for the Big 12, and I'm keeping track on how the Big 12 is doing once it gets into tournament play. I want to see the representatives from what is, in my opinion, the best college basketball conference in America, how they stack up against these other teams that they're facing in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be the same way in college football.
Yeah, it is it will change the sport for the better. The 12-team playoff already was going to do that. I don't know that the general public has a great understanding of how much more fun this is going to be. History tells us this. There has not been any playoff expansion that I can think of that did not greatly benefit the experience as a fan. Not one. Like 64 teams, 68 teams, don't get like whatever it is that you want to use an example of. Like this is going to, and college football has been the most starved for it, right? NFL playoff expansion. Anybody complaining about that?
Not at
No.
all.
Major League Baseball's playoff expansion. Greatest thing the sport ever did. Best thing the sport ever did was expand that postseason out and include other teams. It will make things better. It will make more teams relevant, and it will more accurately help us find the best team in college football. I think a lot of the time we get that anyway, but we don't always get that. And that's because teams get left out that shouldn't get left out because of something that happened whenever, right, throughout the course of a season. Somebody was hurt. You had to start freshman early in the year. You scheduled tough at the beginning of the year. We won't have that anymore. That cream will rise to the top now. And we can stop having a room full of people guess at what variables, like Florida State situation, is not going to happen anymore. It took us a very long time to get here. And it's going to be awesome now that we're here. And I cannot wait for Kansas and Kansas State next year. Avery Johnson, Jalen Daniels, two teams that have built it up and built up to this point. It's going to be incredible. It is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see who that fifth conference champion is, who's that Cinderella team. That's the other thing, too. If you're looking at the portal, and let's say you're San Diego State, my wife's alma mater. You're San Diego State, you got a pretty good team, right? There's some great quarterbacks in the portal. They don't all have a landing spot. You can get it together and say, man, we could get into that CFP. We got a real good team. They'll have a chance, I think, to get better players in the portal because of this now. Because they can always pitch, look, we think we can win this conference. That's going to get us a spot at the table in the playoff. That's attractive, right? Like that's a big deal for a lot of players in the portal. Those transfers who are stuck behind, 5-star athletes up and down who now also, think about being a 4-star athlete at a good school. Not only are you sitting behind other athletes, but now there's the transfer portal and these teams want to win. So I do think the talent distribution gets better through all this, but making sure you have the 5 teams in there and the 4 major conference champions was mission critical to this thing being as good as it is. I'm so excited about it. Let's take a break. We'll get to some of the, let's go to, we'll happen. Ken chimes in. We talked to the Royals yesterday, gave them some positivity. And we said the pressure's on Q there in Kansas City. He thinks that Q did a good job, I think, last year. I don't think he did. We'll talk about it next on Sports Daily. All right. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. So yesterday we talked about the Royals and all the great things they're doing in the offseason and said that Coach Cutraro is going to be on the hot seat potentially this year if the team doesn't find success. Ken thinks that that's unfair to Matt Cutraro and points to a couple of things. And we're getting these comments, by the way. You can find them on our video stream, which is always available for you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Said that his example A is Bobby Witt Jr. I'll counter that, Ken, that said, and just say Bobby Witt Jr. is a transcendent talent, right? Like his development is continuous no matter who his manager is thus far in his young career. Example B he gave is the infield defense. I don't know how to say it any sweeter than, man, I just don't care about that much. It's important. It's a contributing factor on a Major League Baseball team. Your third base coach can handle things like that. And then the second half record. Ken, their second half record last year was 30-41. That's not good. That's certainly not good enough. 30-41 times 2 is 60-80. What is that? 60 and 82. I just like that's not going to be good enough. 30-41. Sorry. Yeah. It's not. it's not, that is not going to get it done. Their longest win streak of the year last year, they had the 7-game win streak. That was nice, but they just lost too many games. And it's not acceptable for them to lose that many games. It's just not. And I know that's not 50-50. That's just the second half is basically after the All-Star break, if you look at it that way. They weren't good at home. They weren't good on the road. They really weren't. Their best month of the season was September, when they went 14-12. And maybe that's what you're talking about there, Ken. But in September, everything's wacky. You get call-ups, you get all that stuff. In August, they were 9-19. So I don't ever look too much into Septembers, other than for teams who are competing hard. Quatraro, like, the players didn't get better. Except for Bobby Witt Jr. Like, that's it. They didn't get any better anywhere. And a lot of the offensive players they were counting on, just they're kind of non-factors now this year, right? Like MJ Melendez. Anybody looking at him as a piece for the future? No. I mean, like, so if you're bringing in Quatraro, it is develop these young players. These young players have to get better, and it's probably not even his fault, Tommy. I mean, that's not what we're trying to say either. What we are trying to say is the pressure for this team now after an offseason like this is so high that if they get off to the kind of start they did last year, I don't think you can continue on that path.
Well, they were throwing guys in the lineup last year, even at the end of the year, that, wouldn't make a 40-man roster probably anywhere else in baseball. They had Freddie Furman, and I know that he's got a little bit of buzz around him, but Michael Massey and Drew Waters and Nick Lofton, and some of these guys have been fairly,
it's a quadruple A lineup,
fairly touted, prospects, and some positivity around them, but not at a point to where you feel good about throwing them into a lineup, a starting lineup in Major League Baseball right now. So they were calling up players in the lineup. They were calling up players on the pitching staff that we all know weren't ready to be in that position. Outside of, Bobby Witt Jr., really. And, I guess, well, of course, Salvador Perez, Vinny Pasquantino was injured and out, and that definitely, threw a wrench in the plans. So I am willing to let last season be an aberration for the Royals. I'm willing to say, you know what, Matt Quatraro, you were not dealt a very good hand last season outside of the emergence of Bobby Witt Jr. You really weren't. Now, the script has been flipped because, as we all know, how aggressive John Sherman and J.J. Piccolo have been in the offseason. In my opinion, I think it's your opinion too, they have given Matt Quatraro and his staff everything he needs to have a successful season, to have a winning record this year, to potentially compete for a division championship, and to make the playoffs. That's where my expectations lie this year because of the acquisitions that they got over the offseason, and of course, the extension to Bobby Witt Jr. So I think because of all of that, I am willing to throw out last season, but I am not willing to throw out this season.
Right. Yep, I agree. I mean, look, if it doesn't happen, you just can't afford to mess around with it. And what's more important is what's happening in the locker room for a baseball manager. I don't remember, because they were never really in games. Like, if Quatraro is like an in-game tactician, was Bruce Bochy, it's obvious that he's a great in-game tactician, right? But there have been great managers who are not that. Ned Yost was one, right? Got Yosted. It was a whole thing, but that team loved him and played hard for him. Ron Washington was that way. Those were the go by the gut guys. We don't know if Quatraro's good at that because he didn't have the opportunity, but they hadn't been good enough to win games. But the point isn't, and it doesn't have anything to do with his ability. It has more to do with the pressure. I think, look, I think that the pressure on this team is moderately high coming out of the gates after you have an off season like this. Like, you have to capitalize on that quickly. Spring training's critical. Bobby Witt Jr. cannot come out of the gates unlucky like he was a year ago. Most of his slow start was based on bad fortune because he was hitting the ball hard and doing all those things, fine. But it will be there. They've got to have Vinny Pasquantino be good this year. They have to. He's very important to what they're going to be able to do this year. And then they got to pitch. And Quattro's going to have to push the right buttons in the bullpen, and they have got to win games to capitalize on this. So we appreciate the comment. I know Ken loves baseball talk, and we appreciate that about you, Ken. Now people can probably tell, like, we're pretty fired up about the Royals baseball season. Way more fired up. It's been since, I'd say maybe 2017, but probably more like 2016. So what are we going on now? 7-8 years since we've been excited about Royals baseball like this. I think it's going to be fun, and they have a roster that you feel like can be competitive. And I don't know if they have enough in the lineup. I'm not sure, but I think, Tommy, they have enough in the starting rotation and in the bullpen to try to make a run at this division. I really do.
I think the last time that I was even remotely interested in what the Royals were doing was probably that shortened 2020 season, that COVID year, because they were only a few games under 500 that year. And I remember, at least down the stretch, there was a conversation, could they potentially make the playoffs in that COVID shortened year? They weren't a great team, but in a smaller sample size, it was better for them in that regard, because they didn't have to play 162 games. I think they were 26-34 or something like that season. So it wasn't great. But they were at least in the conversation. And I think that's what we're asking for now. Is it's not about this particular season, at least for me. It's not about them competing for a championship. That's not where I'm at. It's just, can they be relevant? Can we get them back into relevance this season? And I think with the roster they put together, they should be able to do that.
That's the age-old question. And it has to start early. It has to start early. They can't come out slow. I think they're going to have some buzz. Like, I'll bet attendance is pretty good to start the year. I hope. I can't wait. Of course, it's home of the Royals right here on KFH. We're fired up about that. Hey, by the way, Shocker men's basketball broadcasts are available live for free on 103.7 KEYN and on the Odyssey app. Tune in tonight to KEYN, Wichita State taking on Tulsa at home, or simply download the Odyssey app and search for KEYN pregame there. Starts at 7. We'll talk a little about the Shockers in the second hour. I want to talk about the top of the draft, the Bears, the Falcons making some noise. We've got a list of free agents from CBS Sports as they rank those free agents. I think it's interesting to see sort of how they line some of them up, but a lot to get to in the second hour, but it is wide open on the KFH hotline, 869-1240. I appreciate the comments there. Appreciate the comments on our video stream. You can find us on social media. We'll be back. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily coming right after this.
Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
All right, welcome in, everybody. Hour number 2 of the show here on Sports Daily. Getting our morning going, enjoying some Prairie Fire coffee here around the Odyssey studios and office. Always appreciate Prairie Fire for their fuel they give us in the mornings. Hour number 2 is fully underway as we open up things on this show for a little while here, making our way into the finale of the final month, really, of college basketball before we get to the postseasons and those sorts of things. Tommy, I want to talk about the NFL, though. I know the season's over, but the offseason has begun. Justin Fields, yesterday, or whenever it happened, I don't know, I guess unfollowed the Bears on Instagram. And of course, everybody goes nuts. Like if I'm a player right now, I would do this stuff just to mess with people. I'd call the GM and be like, "Hey, I'm bored. Like I'm just going to do this. Don't worry about it. But I just want to make all these people go nuts." So he does that. I don't know what I would do. I mean, this Bears question is so fascinating. It's as interesting. I think it's more interesting than when the Cardinals had a similar situation, right, with Kyler Murray, because nobody really thought Rosen was going to be the guy. Like we're not sure about Fields yet. I think the situation's very different because it really comes down to, is it Fields or Caleb Williams? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think it's Caleb Williams. I think I would lean Caleb Williams if I remember them both as prospects. But Fields has a ton of upside too. I don't know what the right answer is. I do think that it really does, if you're the Bears, it has to just come down to the quarterback evaluation. And I know Bears fans don't want to hear that because they haven't done that particularly well ever. But that's all that matters. Like that. The length on a rookie deal and all that's irrelevant. Patrick Mahomes has won 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls and has been one of the most expensive quarterbacks in football. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl as one of the most expensive quarterbacks in football. Matt Stafford won a Super Bowl as one of the most expensive quarterbacks in Super Bowl. Like in football. Like that is not as big a deal as people make it out to be. More important than having a quarterback on a rookie deal is having a great quarterback. And so the Bears, quite simply, Tommy, just have to decide which one of these quarterbacks they think will be better and go from there.
I actually kind of sympathize for the Bears a little bit here in this predicament that they're in. I know that it doesn't happen very often or at all to have a number 1 draft pick and have a quarterback that is sitting there that you would want to take with that number 1 pick. The only issue with the Bears, as we all know, is that they have Justin Fields. And so I know that that's a difficult situation to be in. The thing that makes it even more difficult, in my opinion, is the way that Justin Fields kind of came on last year and the way that he played, especially in the second half of the season. The Bears looked better and, they started to actually surround Justin Fields with some players that could complement him, and they allowed him to do his thing in the style in which he likes to do it. And that showed some success down the stretch last year for Chicago. And so I know how difficult it would be to just blow that thing up and move away from Justin Fields after what you've invested in for players around him and what you've invested in for the style of play that works well for him. It just comes down to, how do you assess and evaluate Caleb Williams? And is he a better opportunity for you to get to a championship than Justin Fields is? And that's an impossible question to answer. But then you have to
evaluate it, right?
You also have to look at the other side of it too, that if you don't take him and you stay with Justin Fields, will Caleb Williams go and win a Super Bowl before you do? So it's a really, really difficult situation that they're in right now. And even if you do evaluate Caleb Williams as this transcendent quarterback, I'm not sure that even then there's a slam dunk answer for what Chicago should do.
Well, yeah, yes, there is. Because if he is that, you take him. But we don't know that he is. And here's the other thing to consider. As bad as they've been, they certainly evaluated Bryce Young the right way. Now, they could have taken C.J. Stroud. You could counter that with when they traded that last year. But the guy that most people thought would be the top guy, they clearly evaluated him not as that and traded the pick. So you got to do that again now. Justin Fields, I believe, I'm just looking here, in his last 10 games, so basically after the Chiefs game, which was a disaster, he only was, like statistically, or, however you want to gauge this, and I'll just use quarterback rating. As a passer, he was only below 85, which I think is about league average, might be slightly below, only 3 times in that stretch. So, 7 out of 10 times he was at least decent as a quarterback. And in, 5 of those games, he was good, just as a passer. And then you factor in what he does as a runner. And that's where you look at Fields and you're like, okay, like he is definitely showing us the upside here. If you could surround him with a little more talent, what's the, I get it. And it really, and to me, it's always been, though, if you think Caleb Williams is that guy, right? Like if you think he's the kind of prospect Burrow was, or maybe even Trevor Lawrence, even though Trevor Lawrence hasn't really, in my opinion, lived quite up to that hype. Let's use Burrow as the example. Like, if you think he's that guy, you just take him, and then you take a king's ransom for Fields. Atlanta and Fields makes all the sense in the world, right? If that's one rumored trade partner, but it really does still, like, everything depends on what Chicago decides to do. If they like Fields, they got to trade the pick, and there'll be lots of teams that probably like Caleb Williams. I would start my calls with Washington and say, hey, guys, you want to make sure you get Caleb Williams? You brought in Cliff Kingsbury. Give us that second pick and your first-round pick next year and a third-round pick this year and whatever it is, and we'll get this deal done right now. And then you go down to number 2 and you take Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'd start there. And then, Atlanta's inside the top 10. Remember, the Bears already have 2 of those picks up there. So now you're trying to get into a situation where you can just pile up these first-round picks, but it doesn't matter if you don't evaluate Caleb Williams the right way. If they miss on Williams, it will be far greater. It will be, from the fans' perspective, Tommy, I would guess that if they miss on Williams, it will be perceived as a greater sin than if they miss on Fields and take Williams. Does that make sense? Like, if Fields ends up being pretty good and they traded him to take Caleb Williams, I think the blowback for that would be lesser than if they keep Fields and Williams is the guy. He is that Burrow type prospect. That's what's going to drive Bears fans nuts, because that has been what's plagued them for so many years. Watching Patrick Mahomes when you took Mitch Trubisky, all of that kind of stuff, I think, is what's really got their fans. So I think the risk to not draft Caleb Williams is higher than drafting him. But ultimately, they just have to get his evaluation correct. I think we have a pretty good evaluation of Justin Fields now. I think he is a quarterback that in the right system can really do damage in the NFL. Is Caleb Williams, though, the kind of quarterback that can give any team he plays for in any year that kind of chance?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that anybody can make in looking at this situation is just thinking that it's a quarterback question. And thinking that it's just a question between Justin Fields and Caleb Williams, because it's not. Remember, the Bears have built their offense around Justin Fields. And they've given him, especially, in the last year and a half, they have basically went all in, because remember, they could have drafted Bryce Young or they could have drafted CJ Stroud. They didn't. They doubled down on Justin Fields and they built an offense around him, and they brought in personnel to, kind of be, whether it's offensive line or DJ Moore at wide receiver, or, there were other players, running backs, that they brought in to surround Justin Fields in the style of play in which he is good at. And that's the dual threat throwing and running situation. I'm not saying that Caleb Williams can't operate, in that situation. And I'm not saying that the players can't operate with Caleb Williams instead of Justin Fields, but it's not just a one-to-one conversation. The question becomes, if you give up on Justin Fields and you move him out and you bring in Caleb Williams, are you then going to also have to rebuild other areas of your offense? And maybe not right away, but maybe over the course of a year or two. Are you then looking at replacing members of the offensive line? Are you looking at, I think DJ Moore is a bad example because, he's such a talent that he can probably play with anybody. But are you looking at different kinds of skill position players to bring in to complement Caleb Williams, different than what you did with Justin Fields? So it's not just a Fields or Williams, it's the entire way that this team runs their offense. Are you going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out a better way or a different way to have these players work with Caleb Williams? That becomes the bigger question in my mind.
So here's what Bryce Young brought the Bears last year. They got this number 9 overall pick this year from the Panthers. Sorry, that was last year. And then they got a second, and they got DJ Moore, and then they got this year's first, and they'll get another second still next year from the Panthers. Even if you can just get that, and the Bears defense was the thing that really developed to help them. They're going to have probably they're probably going to have 2 top 10 picks this year, depending on who would want to trade in to get that pick, because it's probably going to be a bad team that's picking high anyway. Maybe you can do like you did with DJ Moore and you go find another receiver. Like, let's say it's Washington, right? Can you go pry away another talented receiver from Washington, just like you did? I mean, the model is there for them. And now you've surrounded more talent. DJ Moore and Fields have a great connection. Maybe you go pry away a talented receiver from Washington in that trade, and then you don't have to take Marvin Harrison Jr., and you go and you take a great offensive lineman. You take another great piece for the defense. It's an offense-heavy draft as far as I can tell, whereas last year was a big defensive draft. Look, the possibilities are endless for the Bears. They are in such a position of strength, and it's also hard to ignore that they got into that position of strength, Tommy, by trading the top pick last year, right? So there's probably some temptation just to do that again. It really just, again, to me, it all comes down to the evaluation of Caleb Williams. We know Justin Fields is pretty good, and we know his upside's high. What do you think about Caleb Williams, though? Because I don't care how good you think Justin Fields might be. If you evaluate Williams the way people have evaluated guys like Burrow, then you take Williams. You just do, because you can't miss on that. But if you don't, then it's an easy decision. You trade the pick. They're in a position of strength. It's as fascinating as we've seen. Again, Arizona was in this situation not long ago, but they didn't have a quarterback like Justin Fields they were giving up on either to take Kyler Murray. They had Josh Rosen, who never played really in the NFL. That was a bad pick the year before. The Bears have made good picks. They've done a good job now, and it's created this position of strength for them.
I think that the risk for the Bears, you mentioned missing on Caleb Williams and the blowback from Bears fans, and that's all true. I think there's blowback regardless if they miss in either direction.
Well, there is.
If they miss in either direction, if they don't take Williams and they trade the pick, and then he goes to somewhere else, whether it's Washington or elsewhere, and wins, then there's going to be blowback. If they do take him and they ship out Justin Fields and Williams doesn't live up to those expectations, then there will absolutely be blowback there too. If they miss in either way with Caleb Williams as a prospect, then there's going to be that blowback from fans. That's what makes it a really difficult decision. But, they know what they have in Justin Fields. They know it because they've seen it, and there's a body of work there in that organization. They just have to decide, is what we know about Justin Fields and the way that he plays and the talent that he possesses, do we feel like that's enough to get us over the edge and win a Super Bowl? And if the answer is yes, we think so, then you absolutely do not keep that pick and trade Caleb Williams, or take Caleb Williams, you trade it away. If they can't say that they fully believe that Justin Fields is a championship winning quarterback with their organization, then at that point, you probably do have to make a move.
I'm going to ask you this, and this is totally unfair. And I think it comes down to this simple evaluation. Do you think that Justin Fields will win a Super Bowl with the Bears or anywhere else in his NFL career? The answer is no.
I don't. I want to say yes, because he possesses this dual threat type of talent that I think can be successful. But I'm not ready yet to say yes.
I mean, look, just compare him to similar style quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson's won an MVP twice, and it's been as difficult as it has been. I think the answer, if we're being honest with ourselves right now, is no. Justin Fields isn't going to win a Super Bowl with the Bears or anywhere else.
Is Caleb Williams going to win a Super Bowl with the Bears or anybody else?
That's what I'm asking you. And that's my point. Like, if that's what you have to be realistic in your evaluation, because I think when we talk about quarterback prospects, we have to think about it that way, right? Who's more, I keep using Burrow as the example because he was this kind of prospect at the top of a draft. Do we think Joe Burrow's going to win a Super Bowl before his career's over?
I think he probably will. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can make a lesser case, but a similar case maybe for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is probably closer right now to, in my opinion, to Justin Fields than he is to Joe Burrow. But there are just those guys, right, historically in the NFL. if we looked across the landscape of football, right, there aren't very many times when a team surprises us that they won it with the quarterback that they have. Does that make any sense? So I just, you have to evaluate the quarterback that way, that simply, right? And if you don't think Fields is that, then you have to give a long look to Caleb Williams and make sure you don't think that of him. In 2017, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. I'm going to list off so in the last 10 years, Tommy, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, and Matt Stafford all will have a case to make the Hall of Fame. One time in the last 10 years, you've had a that caliber quarterback win it, and that was Nick Foles. Now, if you go back a little further, then you get Joe Flacco and Eli Manning. But those two, Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer, right? Flacco will not be a Hall of Famer. But Eli Manning, before that Aaron Rodgers, before that Drew Brees, before that Ben Roethlisberger, you're going to have a situation that since 2002, so in 20 plus years, Tommy, 20 plus years, you will have had two quarterbacks who are not Hall of Famers win a Super Bowl. Two. Nick Foles and Joe Flacco. That's it. 2 in 20 years that it hasn't been a Hall of Famer or a future Hall of Famer win a Super Bowl. So when you're in a position like the Bears are in, and the Justin Fields isn't going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Right now, we don't think that. Now, lots can happen. I'm not saying there's no chance I'm not saying that at all. But if we're looking at it right now, like if you're where the Bears are, you don't think if Justin Fields is going to be a Hall of Famer. Do you think Caleb Williams might be? And if you think Caleb Williams might be or could be, you got to take Caleb Williams, because history in the NFL tells us that your chances to win a Super Bowl without one of those caliber quarterbacks is so stinking low. 2 out of 20. That means you got a 10% chance if you don't have a Hall of Famer at quarterback in the last 20 years to win a Super Bowl. How crazy is that?
But do we think, and again, it doesn't matter what we think, it matters what the Bears think. Do the Bears think that Justin Fields could be a Hall of Fame quarterback?
I don't know.
Right? Because
that's
here's the thing.
That's everything, but
yeah,
everything has to evaluate that.
He's been in that organization for a couple of years now, but he's still really young, and that career is still pretty early, and there's still quite a bit of time for Justin Fields to be able to potentially get it done. I'm just saying, if the Bears are truly evaluating this, honestly, they probably have, from the Hall of Fame perspective, they probably have just as much intuition about whether or not Justin Fields will be a Hall of Famer as they do about whether or not Caleb Williams will be a Hall of Famer. That's what makes it extremely difficult.
But the reality is, and here's where, and maybe this will help me make the point I've been trying to make on this. If they don't think Caleb Williams is that, it doesn't matter what they think about Justin Fields, right? Justin Fields doesn't have to be a Hall of Fame quarterback to be the quarterback that the Bears move forward with. They just move forward with him. It matters more what they think of Caleb Williams. Because if they don't think Caleb Williams has a chance to be that, then you just stay with Fields. And it doesn't matter if he's a Hall of Famer. He's going to be really good, and you're fine in that sense. But if you think Caleb Williams will be that, then you got to take Caleb Williams. If you don't think he is, then there's not any pressure to keep Justin Fields. There's only pressure if Caleb Williams is awesome and you don't take him. And so I think it matters far more how they evaluate Williams than it does how they evaluate Fields at this point. We have a track record and an evaluation. We have a decent idea on Fields. He's going to be probably a good quarterback, a quarterback that's going to make Pro Bowls. I don't know about Hall of Fame. I think it's unlikely to win a Super Bowl. And so then it's just, okay, that still can be a really good quarterback for a long time for that franchise who's been starved for that forever. But is Caleb Williams going to be more than that? And if you think he is, you got to take him. If you think he's not, then don't take him. Stay with Fields and take the draft capital.
Something that you said just a little bit ago actually is making me chime in just a little bit, because you mentioned Matt Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Stafford was the last time a number one QB pick won a Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
remember that draft happened what, in 2010, 2009, and he didn't win for another decade. I don't know that the number one pick QB is something that's recognized as good enough on enough times that it's as important as people seem to be making it.
There is a correlation historically to just like general success in the league with, those number one quarterbacks, but you're right on Super Bowls because you've got Mahomes, you've got Brady, right? Peyton Manning was the other one in 2015. Russell Wilson, certainly not a number one pick. Joe Flacco, and then Eli Manning was. Aaron Rodgers was not. Drew Brees was not. Ben Roethlisberger was not. It's just I think if we don't, and I don't know how the NFL does this. They fool us, but the reality is there've only been a handful of these quarterbacks who've won Super Bowls, and they've like Brady and Mahomes have so many of them, and then like you get, the other ones have been picked up by these other Hall of Famers. But yeah, it doesn't directly correlate to number one overall at all. But you've got the chance to, you just at number one overall, you can basically take your pick, right? You just get the opportunity to do it, and so. That's why I say, like, it matters so much about what they think of Williams. Because if they don't think he's going to be that, then there's no pressure to take him there. The pressure comes if they're wrong. And he is that. And he is one of these guys, the future Hall of Famer and all of these things. It is, it is as interesting an NFL storyline with the draft that I can remember. It is so fascinating, and it's because a credit to Fields. It's because Fields has ended up being pretty darn good. I love it. This is going to be good stuff, man. Good stuff. And I'm real curious to see Caleb Williams and how much he works in the offseason and is out there trying to prove it. He may not want to go to Chicago. I don't know. I mean, maybe he cashed it because he doesn't want to go there. Although it feels like it's a pretty good spot to go right now with the young talent they have. 869-1240. What do you think about it? Let us know right now on the KFH hotline. On the way out, let's give away some HTO. We'll give away some free iced tea, which is good at either Wichita location or in Derby. More than 25 flavors to choose from. So you can get your hands on that, and a free Brewhouse coffee drink, which are available for you as well in East Wichita and in Derby. Good luck, everybody. First caller to the KFH hotline. We'll come back. We'll talk Shockers. Look ahead to tonight's game next on Sports Daily.
$97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
Electrical problems can be shocking. Call the experts at Mr. Electric and experience unmatched professionalism from start to finish. Call ahead scheduling. No
Dude, you gotta hear this.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
Tommy, I'm putting you in the chair then. We'll each make our call. You're in the Bears chair. What are you doing with the pick?
I'm going to trade the pick. I'm going to keep Justin Fields. I've committed to him. I've built an offense around him. I know Caleb Williams is projected to be awesome, but I don't know that. And I've got a quarterback that has shown flashes of being really good. And, if I can continue to cater an offense around him, I feel pretty solid about that opportunity. And so I'm going to keep Justin Fields. I'm going to trade that pick away also because I know that I can get a bounty in return and I can continue to load up like I did a year ago when I traded away the pick before.
Me too. And it's because I don't evaluate Caleb Williams as being that kind of quarterback. I keep Fields and I trade the pick. I try to trade it to Washington if I can. And then I take Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick 2. I don't think Williams is that kind of quarterback. I get the appeal. I think people might see some Mahomes there in the creativity, some Russell Wilson type things, but I don't think it's going to be him. I mean, and for me, it's and when I look at college quarterbacks and like the translating factor for me, I love to look at completion percentage. He has lower college completion percentage than Justin Fields did in college. And it's high. It's at 68%. Let me see what Patrick Mahomes' was in his final year at Tech real quick, because I don't think his was that high either. So at Texas Tech and Patrick Mahomes' final season, he was down at 65, which is why people. So it's not the end all be all, certainly. I'm not seeing that kind of quarterback. I don't see Hall of Fame from Caleb Williams. I like Caleb Williams. I hope I'm wrong. I also like great quarterbacks, so I want there to be more of them in the NFL. But I don't see it, so I keep Fields too. I keep Fields and I trade the pick. The other reason I like Fields, and again, I think it all comes down to evaluating Williams. I don't evaluate him that way. I don't think Fields is a reset the market kind of quarterback. Maybe he will be after a big year, but there's also a world where he's not, doing that for your franchise either, which is somewhat appealing if you're the Bears. And so, yeah, I do the same. I trade the pick. I keep Justin Fields.
Think of everything that you could get out of that number one pick. Think of the additional draft picks and, the talent that you could just continue to stockpile and build, a really good franchise around Justin Fields. You did it once before. You can do it again. And there are absolutely teams out there that are quarterback needy that would evaluate Caleb Williams at a certain level and would really be willing to give you a ton. I mean, look at what the Panthers did a year ago to get that number one pick. It hasn't really panned out for them so far, but they were willing to bet the farm on it. And the Bears were the ones that, they got the bounty in return. So you could definitely do that again with somebody like Caleb Williams and let another team develop him and, go from there. I think it's the safer bet, and I think it's the overall better bet for them to just hang on to Fields.
Yeah, well, better or worse, I just think their team is going to be better in the short term, at least with Fields right now. And I don't think Caleb Williams is going to Washington and all of a sudden Washington is what the Chiefs are now. I just don't think that's going to happen, or the Bengals are now with Burrow. So that's where that goes. And I'm surprising myself on that, by the way. I kind of had leaned the other way until here recently, and I'm trying to talk through what I'm saying the Bears need to do, and it's really evaluate Caleb Williams. And I just don't think that. I don't think he's going to be that guy. We'll see. All right, Shockers tonight, Tommy. It's a rematch against Tulsa. We talked about the last 7 games and how it was a stretch they could, really piece some together. Did not get off to a good start. The first 2 came on the road. Maybe we were looking a little too optimistically. Well, now the next 2 are at home, and they're against Tulsa and Temple. They're both on national television. Tulsa tonight. Remember, Tulsa beat Wichita State in that, just absolutely gut-wrenching second half where they outscored the Shockers by 22 points to go. You blew an 11-point halftime lead. Man, it has got to be there tonight. We have to see this team. And I don't know that there's any explanation for them not winning this game other than the season has gotten away and they're not fully invested anymore. I don't know how else we'll be able to fairly look at that, because you had Tulsa down 11 on the road at half. You have to be able to come back home and want that revenge and want those things. I don't know what else to really say. I mean, they haven't won since since UTSA, which is another game. And by the way, in the UTSA game, a game they should have come in and, put their foot down, they did that at home that time. So do that again. And let's see if over these next 5 games we can't renew the optimism that they could make a little noise in the conference tournament. Starts tonight. They got to have it. They got to have a big game tonight.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you're comparing these 2 teams, and it's happened several different times in conference play for Wichita State, where they have actually ranked higher than their opponent in both KenPom and net, but then they end up losing the game. And there's a big reason why, at that point, that their conference record is what it is. This is another example of that. They are currently ranked higher than Tulsa in both KenPom and in net. They are. Tulsa has a better conference record than
because they should be better than Tulsa.
Exactly.
I mean, they're 7-point favorites at home tonight.
So what I'm saying is that this has happened multiple different times, and eventually this has got to change. It's got to change when you are losing to objectively inferior opponents. That's what Tulsa is. That's what several of these other losses have been during this rough stretch, for Wichita State. It would be different if we were talking about teams that had the statistics that backed up the fact that they were better than Wichita State. But this game tonight is another example of a team that does not live up to Wichita State from an objective statistical perspective, Wichita State ranks higher in both of those categories. So they've got to win. They've got to win at home. That's why the odds makers put the line where they did. Wichita State's got to get the win because they're a better team objectively than Tulsa is. They've just got to get it done. There's really nothing more to say than just that. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and the conversation is much different.
There are 3 teams that they are objectively better than, and you get all 3 of them at home remaining on the schedule. Tulsa, Temple, Rice. They are absolutely better than those 3 teams. You have to win those 3 home games. Tulane, not definitive at all. Tulane might be better. UAB certainly has been better this year. Both of those games are on the road. Okay. That's fine. You can convince me that Tulane and UAB are better. You can convince me that those are road games. They have to win these 3 games at home against teams they are better than. Flat, period, end, have to. Or there will be no hope going into things. If you can't beat those 3 teams at home, you don't have a whole lot to hang your hat on. So be fired up. 2 of those are revenge games, Tommy. They should be foaming at the mouth to go out there and smack Tulsa and smack Temple for losses that they feel like they shouldn't have had. And then the other one we haven't seen yet, right? So I don't know how else to frame it other than these are the things that they have to be able to do. If you're a fan and you're trying to get a good idea of the state of things, it has to be these games. They have to be able to win them. You're a 7-point favorite at home for a reason, because you're that much better than Tulsa. You had them down 11 at halftime at their place. You can't let them come into Koch Arena. I don't care what's happened this season. There has to be some, attitude there as well from everybody. I hope it's there. They need another win like they had against UTSA, and they need 3 of those out of their next 5 games. Let's get a little momentum going here.
Yeah, I think at that point, because we know that the remaining 3 home games are against teams that, again, objectively, they're better than, you have to have all 3 of them. 100% you do. And it's going to be, in my opinion, you mentioned this at the very top, it's going to be a pretty, I think, telling stretch of basketball, especially for these 3 home games, to see how dedicated and invested the current players on the roster are. At this point, your season is a wash. Things have not gone the way that you've wanted them to go. You've absolutely fallen short of expectations. That's clear. So I think the motivation then, it becomes that much tougher, and I think it's going to show me what kind of leader Paul Mills is. It's easy to lead in good times.
Well,
it's easy to lead in good times. It is that much more difficult to lead in bad times. And when you are playing opponents that you are better than at home, that you should beat, at that point, it's going to tell me, okay, is he able to instill confidence into these players to go out there and keep putting it all on the line to get victories in a season that's basically lost? So again, I think at that point, it does make this final stretch of regular season games that much more important to me.
I agree with that. I also think, though, that there has not maybe been enough front-facing pressure on the players themselves. The players have to understand that, well, whether this is reality or not, I'm not sure. But they should be playing for their jobs to some degree, right? Because if you can't get it out of these guys, Paul Mills is going to have to find other guys.
But in a world of the transfer portal these days, that used to be hey, you're playing for your job and you'll sit the bench and whatever.
Portal. No. I don't mean sit the bench. I mean not be in the program. That's what I'm saying. With the transfer portal, if this particular group can't come and there has to be an evaluation process happening right now too. Which of these guys are bought in and a part of the future and which guys aren't. And some of them will leave on their own, and some of them will probably leave because there will be other players brought in, or there should be, and that's a part of it too. And yeah, I think the most pressure is certainly on Paul Mills, but I think there's pressure on the players as well. And I do think there are players on this roster that can step up and be a part of a bright future. Which ones are they? Let's learn about that play angry attitude right now, because that's what it's going to take in Wichita. You got to have a little of that. You got to want to come out and get revenge against Tulsa tonight. That has to be a part of the DNA of the players that are going to be successful here.
Think about the long-term history with Wichita State and Tulsa anyway. I mean, even despite everything else from this season, I mean, that rivalry goes back a long way, and those two programs don't like each other. They never have. And so that should be a factor as well. It 100% should be. I want to see fire. I want to see passion. I want to see effort. I want to see all of those things every game for sure, but especially this game inside Koch Arena against Tulsa, a team that you're objectively better than. Go out there, put your foot on their throat, and get it done.
Well, Paul Mills coached at ORU in Tulsa. I imagine there's, not rosy feelings there either. Use all of it. Let's get everybody, fired up again and see it. We'll get it tonight at 8 o'clock. We've got the pregame coverage beginning over on KUYN at 7. You can hear that on the Odyssey app as well. Congratulations to Rob for winning our iced tea and coffee from HTO. Tom and I will be back, and we will go through briefly this list. It's just a very kind of preliminary free agent list that CBS Sports put together for the NFL. And we'll tell you where some of the Chiefs' names end up on this to sort of give you a feel for what looms. We'll do that next on Sports Daily.
do this thing. Go!
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Just making our way through a Wednesday here. Lots of fun, lots of interaction from you out there. Appreciate it, whether it's on social media, whether it's on our video stream, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, whether it's over the air here, whatever it is, we appreciate it. Let's go over this list real quick, Tommy. So CBS Sports put out their 100 top 100 NFL free agents. Kirk Cousins comes in at 1. Chris Jones comes in at 2. L'Jarius Sneed comes in at 6. So you've got Jones and Sneed there. There are 5 total Chiefs in this list. Willie Gay is down at 43. I think the chances of him being back are almost none. Then you have Drew Tranquill on that list at 84. And you have Michael Dana on the list at 89. It will be very interesting to see how they handle all of these things. It obviously starts at the top, but, 5 inside the top 100 gives you some idea of what they're dealing with. And, it's quite frankly, it's more than that for players that mean something to them.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the priorities and the way that it should be ranked for Kansas City this offseason as far as free agents are concerned. And I know that from a big picture point of view, when you're looking at the entire NFL, you're going to put Chris Jones higher up on that list as far as ranking free agents around the league than L'Jarius Sneed.
But Hall of Famer.
But that priority is, I think, shifted and flipped around for the Chiefs' individual and internal priorities. They've got to prioritize L'Jarius Sneed over Chris Jones.
Well,
not saying you can't prioritize both of them, but as we've talked about before, and I wholeheartedly believe, the number one priority has got to be L'Jarius Sneed.
I think it's left tackle, and then I think it's Sneed. But, it's not, Sneed and then maybe left tackle. I think I have Sneed and then left tackle. But the part of it is, we don't you've got to bid against these other teams, too. All right, let's take a quick call, just a couple of minutes here, Sally, before we have to take a hard break. Welcome into Sports Daily, Sally. What's on your mind?
Yes, I just had 2 things. One, I did not know about the connection with Wichita and the Milwaukee Bucks, and I didn't know if people knew that the new person was going to give all of his money from the All-Star game to the old coach.
Oh, Doc Rivers was going to give it to. I hadn't heard that. That's really interesting. I'll have to look into that.
That was really nice. And then I'm just curious why nothing was said. I watch Channel 12 all the time. I listen to KFH. I listen to Kevin Stahl. I didn't hear one word about the big shocker win for the ladies last Saturday. I was at the game. It was a great game, and it was a win, and nothing was said about it that I heard. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, we always intend to get that in with Kevin Saul. He joined us a little bit later. He was in a meeting, so we just ran out of time when we started with softball and baseball.
It was exciting.
Yeah, look, they've won 2 of their last 3.
Too.
They've won 2 of their last 3. The women have.
Yeah,
so that's. I hope that's a positive turn in the right direction. Unfortunately, they have struggled as much as the men have this year.
Right.
But look, 2 or 3. 2 or 3, maybe that's something. There, I can tell you this, Sally, and I've said this before. Where I went to school, where I went to college, women's basketball was a bigger deal. I am a massive women's basketball fan, and I want nothing more than the return of that program to its former glory because I have 2 daughters. I can't wait to take to those games. They just got to be better. They have not been very good for a while. And
there was a pretty good crowd there too.
Good.
Well, that's great to hear. It was
4 for, you got popcorn, hot dog, and your drink, and a ticket for 4 people for $32. You can't beat that.
That's great.
Yeah.
If it turns around, I appreciate it, Sally. If it turns around, look, I think there is some massive appeal and potential there for Wichita State women's basketball. I think there are a lot of people that really enjoy women's basketball and a lot of people that becomes a really desirable family event. Honestly, Tommy, we talk about it all the time. I need to get my daughters to these games where they see high level basketball because they're starting to really get into college basketball. And we've watched a lot of the K-State women on TV this year, and they love it.
Yeah, and it has been, and we've talked about it before, just a huge influx of women's college basketball fans because the product is so good right now overall. Caitlin Clark and all of that. And then, of course, here locally with K-State. I want to see Terry Nooner do that at Wichita State. I think he can. I like him a lot. I know it's been a rebuilding year. I think they're on the right track, though.
It's been a bad year for them, too. I mean, let's be as honest as we are with the men. It's been bad for them. And hopefully 2 out of 3 is that's kind of what we keep saying with the men. Like, we just need something like that, right? Let's get a stretch here where you put some games together and have a little buzz going into an off season. The Shocker women play next again on February 24th. That's on Saturday on the road. All right, we'll be back. Tell you what's on the network tonight, next on Sports Daily.
Winter is more than half.
Quick note, a little breaking news. Eric Hosmer officially retiring after 13 seasons. Of course, will always be fondly remembered in Kansas City as a key piece of one World Series championship and 2 World Series appearances. Haas, one of the all-time favorite Royals, I would venture to guess, is retiring. That's it for us. Don't forget, you've got the Shockers on KEYN tonight. You've also got Butler basketball right here on KFH. That coverage begins at 7:15. A busy night on the networks. Congratulations to our contest winners. We'll have more to give away throughout the days here. For Jad Chambers and Tommy Castor, I'm Jacob Albracht. We'll see you Thursday.